Hello everyone and welcome to Saturday Night Crafting. We are switching things up tonight and I'm really excited. I think you're gonna love it. We have got Christmas in July coming up. That's the kind of thing that card makers always do, and I thought let's make a fun gift. So we could start now, make some of these, and then you've got your Christmas in July sorted, you've got your projects ready to go, because these are going to make beautiful gifts. They're also going to use up our designer papers, which is something I'm on like a massive roll of doing at the moment. I'm really enjoying using up my designer papers. So we're gonna learn to do some bookbinding. This is something that I've always wanted to do, and I've done lots of other kinds of bindings. I've done lots of journal making in my days. That's what I did before I got into card making properly. I used to make journals and books, and I absolutely loved it, and I wanted to have a go at bookbinding. So these are 3 that I've already made, and we are going to make this size of one here. I'm not going to give too many exact measurements because it all depends on what paper you use and what you've got in your stash, but the idea is all the same. You just need to adapt it to your materials, and I'm going to share with you how you do that. Now, it does look like you need a lot of kit, but it's not actually a lot of kit, and you should have most of this stuff already in your stash. And if you don't, I'm going to share with you 2 kits that I've bought additionally that have made the bookbinding process so much easier, and they're not that expensive either. I was really impressed with them. But this one here is my last one. This one here was my first one. It's been a learning curve, and I have made some mistakes along the way, like my paper is way too short. You know, I just had fun. I had to go and I made some books. So this one is the one that I'm not going to give to anyone, but this is the one that I made using my 6x6 papers. And I love how it turned out, apart from I wish the binding was a bit wider on it. I wanted a bit more, so I've made sure that I've had a bit wider of binding or edge binding on the rest of mine. But I absolutely think it's so stinking cute, and this was a 6x6 or 2 6x6 pieces of paper, and that made it this book. And this is also just normal printer paper that I put inside this one. Then the second one I made was an A5 book. And in this one I used some mixed media paper and did some mixed media pages inside of this one, but they all lie beautifully flat. They're bound with string and glue, so they are stunning and they should last a long time. So this was my second one that I created, and I was really in love with it. Fell more in love with the process, still made some mistakes along the way, but on my third one I think I absolutely nailed it, and this is the one we're going to do today, just because you can get one book out of one sheet of 12x12 paper. You get the front and the back cover, and for this one I used watercolor cardstock on the inside, so rather than paper I've used card, and I just love how it looks, and I love that whoever I gift this to can do some art in it, or they could just do notes in it, but it's stunning, and I think I finally managed to master it a bit better and have my pages a bit more even, and I want to show you how I did it, and I want to do it with you. So you're going to need something to trim with. I like using my paper trimmer to cut all my little bits out with, but I also am using a knife. This is a craft knife I got from the dollar store in Canada. It's lasted me my whole entire crafting life, and I just replace the blade when I need to. So just a cheap craft knife, paper trimmer. I've got some board, and I'm going to give you a top tip with my boards. So I used to work as a picture framer before I went full-time with YouTube, and in the picture framing place we used to always have chunks like this leftover. So you can see on the back it's got its label on there, its code, and this would be the center that they would cut out to make the frame for the picture frame, so the mount board, and this is called mount board, and this stuff here often ends up in the bin. So if you have a picture framers in your area, drop them a message and ask if they have any offcuts or scraps that you could have, and 9 times out of 10 they'll probably give them to you for free because they just go in the bin. So I've got loads of this board, and I still go and pick up more whenever I need it from my old boss, but this is basically free, and it is really thick, nice chipboard, so this makes excellent covers for your books. The other option that you can use is sometimes when you buy 12x12 paper pads, it comes with a section of chipboard in the back. You could use that as well. An old cereal box will do. It won't be as thick or as sturdy, but that kind of cardboard would also work for you. I would avoid probably corrugated cardboard because it's a bit more flimsy and easy to bend and easy to dent. But if you've got a picture framers local to you, this is called mount board and you can probably get it for free. Now when you get some mount board, sometimes it comes with beveled edges. I'm going to share with you how you can trim off those beveled edges and what to do with them because they're not so great when you go to put them into a book. So you need some chipboard. I've got a cutting mat. I've got this A3 cutting mat. I just went and picked this up for £4 from Home Bargains in the UK because I really wanted something that was cheap that I could get glue on and not be worried about. But I'm going to be doing lots of cutting on this mat, so a cutting mat is essential if you're using a knife. And then scissors, bone folder. I've got a couple paintbrushes, one wide, one small. These are essential for applying glue. I've got some of these bulldog clips. They are the sort of paper holders. They're quite strong. Anything like this will do. It will help hold, but the bigger the better because you can hold more papers, obviously. I've got some water, which I'm going to stick my paintbrushes in when I'm done gluing, just so it doesn't dry out because it's very warm here. It's over 30 degrees today, so it's hot, hot, hot. Things are drying quick, so I need to make sure I've got some water to put stuff into. And then I've got my glue, and this is, I don't know, if you live in the UK, you'll probably have heard the goo puddings, GU. They are the most amazing puddings ever, and or desserts for anyone in North America or other countries that don't call dessert pudding. But you get these little cups, they're like a glass pot. And if you take a Pringles lid, so this is an old Pringles lid, they fit perfect on there. So I'm just using this to hold my glue because my glue is in a bottle like this, and I'm going to decant it into here just so it's easier to use with my paintbrush. And so yeah, just an old jar with a lid would be handy for your paintbrushes. I'm using Aleens tacky glue today, but I've also used this one, this pin flare bookbinding glue. This was also really, really good. And I did try the Craftelier tacky glue, and I didn't like this one as much. I felt like it was a bit too wet and it didn't dry quite as quick. So one of these two, something that's like a really good strong quick drying tacky glue, works really well. But this one I didn't find worked brilliantly for bookbinding. I've also got a few other bits, but I'll share them on the way, but they're not essential, they just were helpful. Now I'm going to move on to the kits that I bought. So this was about £11 on Amazon, and it came with everything you could need to bookbind, and this for me was the winning, absolute top winning accessory for bookbinding. It came with everything I could possibly need, so I absolutely love this. It comes with curved needles, it comes with waxed thread, which I find super, super helpful and easier to work with when doing your bookbinding. It's nice thick thread. It's very similar to like the thickness of embroidery thread. It's very similar to this kind of stuff, but it's waxed, so it just stays in place so much easier. And you get 4 rolls in this kit, so you get 4 different colors, sorry, and you get loads on each one, so that in itself was amazing. Then you get your poking tool, a dowel, I want to say. It's the stabby thing to put your holes for your binding. You got some seam, I think this is seam binding, but I'm going to use a different fabric for it, but you get some of that. You get some clips, which I didn't find were big enough for what I was doing, but that's brilliant for when you want to clip something smaller. You get a bunch of bone folders, which is amazing. You get a ruler. There was a pair of scissors that came in here as well, but I've got them on my other desk because I was already using them for something else. You get a paintbrush. You get some bulldog clips, the smaller ones, a thimble, a threader. I think there are a couple threaders actually, and then straight needles. And I'm not sure what this thing is, but it's got a hole in it, so it's like almost got a pokey hole, so if you wanted to thread your needle through with a pokey tool, you could. But this kit is amazing, and I didn't think I needed a curved needle until I started doing this, and I did my first book with a straight needle, and it probably took me half the amount of time to do my binding with a curved needle. So a curved one, so worth it. So this kit I'll link down below for you, but this came from Amazon. It was like a no-name brand kit, and it's absolutely amazing. I've reached for things in this box already so many times. It's been really, really handy. So if you want to do bookbinding, this is a great starter kit, and for £11, or roughly around $15–20, it's amazing. The next thing I've got is this bookbinding set, which I bought this forever ago. I've had it like 2 years and not used it. This is not essential at all. I'll share with you how you can do this without this kit. But if you have this kit, or you can find it for cheap, I'll link the one I've got and I'll link a couple others down there for you. But if you can get a kit like this, then it might be handy and helpful. But I'll share with you how you can do the exact same things we're going to do with this kit without it. So this is not essential, but I did find it helpful. Now these two things here are the only two things we're going to use from that kit. This one chops off corners and this one helps line up your pages and your spine. So the first thing we're going to do is get our pages ready, and then that way we can bind them, and while the glue is drying we can work on the other steps because the glue takes the longest time to dry with this. So I have got this watercolor paper. I bought it quite a while ago. I don't know if it's still available. It's from Basin Creative. It's very thick watercolor card. I'm going to do 10 sheets of paper, which will give me 5 signatures, which then gives me essentially 4 surfaces to work on for each piece of cardstock, because we're going to fold it in half. And because this cardstock is super thick, we are going to do 2 at a time only. With my other ones I did 5, maybe 6 sheets when it was photocopy paper, but with this stuff, because it's so incredibly thick, I can only manage really 2. So I'm going to fold them over and do my best as I can to kind of make them connect and meet, but you will see, because they are so thick, we will get overage. So I'm going to crease that really firmly with the bone folder because it's so thick, but you can see here that you get this overage where it's not quite lined up, the pages are not quite equal, and we're going to trim that off, so don't worry. So we're going to do that for all 5 signatures. We're going to just fold them in half with 2 pieces of cardstock in each and give them a firm crease. So now that all the signatures are done, which is what we call these, where they've got 2 pieces of cardstock and we got 5 of them, so we got 5 signatures, we need to trim off those uneven edges, and we're going to use our paper trimmer to help us. But obviously this is really thick with this cardstock, so it's not going to cut fully through. So we're going to just do it twice, 1 on each side. So we want to get a nice even measurement. So I'm going to go for 2 centimeters smaller. Turn that off, and then I can flip it over, line it up, and then I've got a beautifully nice straight edge. I'm going to do that on all 5 signatures. I'll line it up to 10.3, which for me is 2 centimeters smaller, or you could do 1/8 of an inch, but that's just taking off those uneven edge bits. Once you've done that, we're going to then need to mark where we want our binding to start, where our holes are going to go. On something this small, I like to do 2, so 1 on each end. On something larger, like this one, I did, I think 1, 2, 3, 4 on this one, just so I had it more evenly spread. On something smaller, we can just do 2, and it doesn't matter your measurements as long as they're the same on each end. So I like to find a spot where I feel like that would look alright, and at this point it's at the 12. So I'm going to go at the 12, so I'm going to line up, I can see it from here, you can't see it, but I'm lining up the edge of my cardstock with that 12, and then I'll grab myself a pencil and I'll kind of hold my ruler, and I am going to just draw a line down there, and then I'm going to take my ruler, flip it around the other way, and I'm going to line up the edge of my cardstock again with the 12, and then I will do a line on this side. So now we got pencil marks and we know exactly where we're going to put our holes. Now you could come in a bit further if you wanted them more evenly spread out. It really doesn't matter because we're going to also put glue here which will hold them together as well. So when we need to make our holes, we're going to take each signature one at a time, and you're going to lie it flat, being careful not to shift your cardstock. You don't want it to move on each end. Then we're going to take our dowel, I think is what it's called, and we are going to poke right on the seam, just gently enough to get through those layers of cardstock. And then what I like to do to make sewing easier is I lift up my card and then I just kind of push it through further to make the hole bigger. Okay, so now I've got 2 decently sized holes, and that just makes sewing a lot quicker and easier because I don't struggle getting the needle and the thread through the hole. So I'm going to do that on each one of these signatures. I went ahead and put my waxed thread onto my curved needle, and this is the needle and thread that I got in my kit. I just literally thread it through. I'm not going to tie a knot in it as it will make it more difficult to get through my papers. So I've got my thread ready to go. What I'm going to do is start with one of my signatures, and I'm going to go in from the top. And I want to go in from the top so that I've got a little tail left over. So I'm going to pull that through and pull it until I've got maybe 1 inch to 1.5 inches of thread sticking out the top. Then we're going to go in the other side, and it's always just going to be in, out, in, out. So I'm going to go out this one, and this is where the curved needle is so nice because it just funnels through really easily, and when we do the next stitch you'll see even more how it's great. And I really struggle to get these tight. I am absolutely pants at making sure that my signatures are all really snug together. I really struggle with that. So once we've got our first set through, it's just dead simple all the way through, we grab the next signature and we're going to line it up with the first one. And because it came out the top, we're then going to go in to the next one from the top. So this doesn't need to be tight just yet. We can get that through first. So we can pull that. And then this is where we're going to need to start getting it tight. And this is where I find it's easiest to use my binding clips, my bulldog clips. So I'm going to come back out on this side. I hope this is coming up clear in the video. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hold those together and then use my clips to kind of hold it in place while I just pull on that string nice and snug. I find this is the easiest way to have additional hands when you only have 2. So that's going to hold that in place. I'm going to pull that nice and snug. And I don't know if you noticed that went nice and tight, so I just pull that nice and snug. And then be careful because I already slit my finger right there by doing that and pulling, and it just went right through my skin. So just be careful. And then what we're going to do is tie this in a little knot. So this is the first signature we're attaching, and we're going to tie a little knot nice and snug again, and it's quite difficult because it's small. And then we're going to double knot it and make sure that's pulled nice and tight so it won't come out. Nice and snug. And then we can trim off that little bit there, and then we can add on the next one. And this is where it's going to be getting a bit more complicated and a bit more tricky for me to explain to you. So take the clips off. Next one. So because we've come out the top, we're going to go in, then that attaches it to that side, and then we will go like we did the first time and kind of go in to the outside, or up through the outside. Okay, now this is where it gets tricky. So I'm gonna just make sure they're nice and even, use my extra hands. I don't know if this is called a slip knot. I can't quite remember what the name of it is, but it's a knot that I did in sewing class. And we're going to take our needle. I feel like I'm all thumbs when I use these things. We're going to take our needle, and this is where the curved needle is so handy. We're going to go in and under that first loop there. So we're going to go under it. And when we come up, you can see you've got the loop here. We're going to come up in the middle of that loop, which then will make a knot. So I've come up through the middle of that loop. So now you can see there's like kind of a knot forming. That makes sense? And we're going to pull that and pull it super snug and tight, and don't slice through your finger and don't stab yourself with the needle. Pull that really tight. I've already got really loose on this side again. I'm really rubbish at getting these really nice and tight. So that has knotted that to the previous signature, and this one is stuck to the previous signature because we went in that way. So we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to repeat the same thing. We're going to add the next signature, which will go straight into, we'll go through, up, and then make a knot around the previous signature. And yes, I did not give myself enough strings. I'm definitely gonna have to get some more string, but what we're gonna do is make sure that that is all lined up. Grab my clips. I'm gonna pull it nice and snug. And then I'm going to take my needle, go under the previous loop, which is loose because I didn't pull it tight enough. And as we come out from it, we want to make sure that we go through the center to make a knot. So we're going to make sure we go through that center point, and then that will tie a nice knot for us. Nice and snug. And I'm going to do it a second time because I need to get more string. So I'm going to do that again and straight through the middle. And then I can take my needle off, pull that nice and tight. And then I can get my next signature and get some more strings. I've got my next one on there on my string, and I'm going to do the same thing I did before. So I'm going to go in. Kind of glad I've mucked this up because then you can see what happens if you don't have enough string and how you can fix it. So we're going to go in just like we did on the first one and leave a little tail. Okay, and now that tail we can tie together with that tail, and we'll go up through this one here. And what we're going to do is we can tie a knot in those, and we will tie a knot with this one here. There we go. Now before we take the clips off, we are going to add some glue to the spine, which is what we need to spend some time drying. One of the extra tools that I don't have that would be helpful to have is a book press. So I don't know if you've seen them, but you get a piece of wood and a piece of wood, and then there's usually some screws that you can tighten, and it basically just squishes this whole entire edge together like that, so that you can then apply glue along there nice and even. I don't have that, but I do have this IKEA plate holder. I think it's for plates or pots and pans, like lids. So I'm going to use that because it will hold it up straight, and it's not giving me much pressure. But I'm going to use my clips. Once I get the glue on there, I will put my clips on, and then that will hopefully put that extra pressure on to give it a nice firm squeeze shut. So that's how I'm kind of solving that problem of not having that. So all we're going to do is add a decent amount of glue to the spine, and it would be good to do this twice over, but if you put a decent layer on first and have the time to let it dry, I've found it's not too bad if you don't put a second layer on. And I'm going to make sure I'm going over the string quite thick because I want that string to be really glued down, and I'm trying really hard not to get into any of the gaps of where my papers meet, just because I haven't got that pressure there just yet. So I'm just trying to make sure I'm not forcing the glue down in the middle, and I'm trying to make sure I'm just getting the spine. We don't want to get any glue outside of the spine because we don't want the glue to stick to our papers. So I'm going to go ahead and put first clip on there. I'm just using the very tip of the clip, so this bit here, and pinching the very tip of the papers, and I find that gives it a decent amount of pressure to hold my papers together while the glue sets and dries. And then I'm going to set this side to dry. Okay, so let me show you how I cut down my chipboard. This is obviously almost A3 size, so it's massive. And if you can see, it's got a beveled edge, which is where it's cut on an angle, so that you get the nice angled look on your mount board when you're in a picture framers. So if you've got an edge that's damaged or beveled in my case, it's super easy to work with. So all you need to do is pop it in your trimmer and just trim off that edge. So I'm going to stick it in. Again, it's the same as my cardstock. So my trimmer will not cut all the way through, but what I do is I do that first slice, and to avoid having to think about measurements and work out what exactly that measurement was, I then just take my knife and I just stick it into the groove and just run it along. and it fits nicely in that groove, and then it just pops off when you've gone all the way through. So now I've got a nice flat, straight edge. This one was already flat and straight, thankfully. And so now I can go ahead and cut my sizes that I need, and then I can do the same and just trim off the edge there. So what I want to do is quickly measure, because I trimmed off these edges on my book. I just want to have a quick measure and see how big that is. So it's just shy of 10.5, which is A6. So I'm going to do my covers so that they're just ever so slightly, probably 1/8 of a millimeter on the 3 edges bigger than my paper. So you see on this one here, my covers poke out just ever so slightly from where the paper is, and then that way you get this kind of nice look where the paper's tucked inside your book. So I'm going to go ahead and cut my covers so that they are just slightly bigger than my paper. So I've cut myself my covers, and before I go ahead and put away the last little scrap piece, I'm going to cut myself a spine piece. Now once I wrap the paper around these, it does make them longer, and this won't be exactly the same length anymore, but I haven't found that that's made any difference in my books, and it's not impacted it. So to save on cutting a whole nother piece lengthwise and width, I'm just going to use the length that I've already cut for my book covers, and I'm going to go ahead and cut myself a spine. Now your spine size will depend on how thick your book is, so it depends on what paper or what cardstock you used. So what you need to do is measure your spine and then work out how big you need to make it. So for mine is going to be 12 millimeters wide. And then now I've got my spine piece ready as well, and I don't have to worry about cutting that once I've got my covers made. So the next thing you need is some paper for your covers. Because of the size I'm doing, I know that I can get both my covers out of one sheet of 12 by 12. So I'm going to use a piece of the Botanical blooms from Paper Rose. So I'm going to cut my paper to be roughly 1 inch on all 4 sides, bigger than my piece of chipboard. 1 inch felt a bit big in the end, so I went for 3/4 of an inch. Roughly on all sides. So I just got a nice decent border. It doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to be exact. As long as it wraps over and allows us to kind of cover up to the edge, that's all that matters. So we're gonna go ahead and stick our boards onto our papers. So this is where I'm going to get my bigger brush, and all I'm going to do is just cover the entire board with my adhesive and then stick it down onto my paper. Give it a firm press, and I like to flip it over and then take my bone folder and just kind of firmly rub that along the top, making sure that all that adhesive is spreading out nice and evenly underneath my piece of paper. So I'm going to go ahead and repeat that on this one here. Now I'm going to do this one on camera with you and do the other one off camera. So what we need to do next is chop our corners so that we can fold all of our paper over like you're wrapping a present. So if you're doing it with scissors, you're just going to kind of cut on an angle and try and just snip that corner off so that you're leaving yourself a little gap there of paper. And actually you can get these from almost anywhere. I saw them on Temu and on Amazon. They are everywhere. So I'll link a few down below for you. But what it is it allows you to just pop that on and slide it right into that corner, and then you can take your knife and you just run it along that edge. Oops. Pull that off, and it gives you the exact perfect distance and the perfect angle for your corners. So I really love this thing because I always cut wonky and always make a mistake, and this just allows me to do it without making any errors at all. So you can just cut those edges off, and it's so quick and easy and no thinking about it. So once you've got that done, what I like to do is fold over all my edges and give them a firm press. So I'm going to open them up, fold it, open it up, fold it, and do the last one. And now they're all pre-creased and ready to go. So this is where my little guy is going to come in again, and you want to have some scrap paper to hand. So what I'm going to do is glue this edge here, and we're just going to apply adhesive. So I'm going to do my 2 opposite sides first, so that when I do my folds in a minute when I do the other two sides, it just looks nice and even. So I'm putting on a nice thin layer of glue, and because this is such good glue, it dries really quickly. It sticks really fast, and I don't have to worry about waiting for the dry time between. So when I've got those two sides done, what I like to do is just tuck in these little corners. So I like to take my bone folder and I kind of pull it slightly towards myself and just kind of tuck it in, or push it away if it's on the side closest to me. Just kind of tuck, I don't know what these are called, but just tuck them in a little, and then I find it folds much nicer and much easier. I'm gonna go ahead and do the other cover and shove this underneath a book for a minute and go get myself a drink. Right, so I got myself a drink, prepped all my other bits ready to go. This is an old pillowcase. So I've just cut myself a piece from this. This is what I've used in every single one of my books. It's just a thin fabric. Any fabric will do, I think, as long as it's not like stretchy. So this is yeah, just pillowcase fabric. So ideally what you want is for it to be able to go over your spine and then have roughly an inch on each side of sort of flap material. So about an extra inch. So whatever your spine is, plus about an inch for each side. You want it to be shorter than your book. So you should have about 1/4 inch on each side where there is no fabric, because we don't want this showing. So it's just a piece that's going to go onto your spine, and then the flaps are what's going to allow it to connect to your actual covers. So what we need to do is apply glue in the middle to hold on that fabric. Right, so now I'm going to line up my book and try and aim for the middle of my fabric and get the fabric in the middle of my book. This doesn't matter if you get it slightly wonky or slightly off. No one's going to see this. This is all hidden. So when you get that fabric on there, we're just going to push that down, and I'm going to clip it on again and let that sit for a minute to dry while we do the spine. So this is called book fabric or bookbinding fabric. It's basically thin fabric like the pillowcase with paper stuck to the back of it. And I got a pack of 4 different colors off of Amazon for around I think it was about £12, and you got 2 sheets of each color. I'll link that down below for you so you can check it out if you want, but all you need to look up is bookbinding fabric or book fabric. Book cloth. I think it's called book cloth maybe. Or book fabric. But I've gone and cut myself a piece that again is going to be bigger than my spine. So this is my spine piece that we cut ages ago, if you remember. That's going to go in the middle of here. So I have got myself an extra inch on the top and an extra inch on the bottom, and then roughly an inch on either side. So if you just kind of picture an inch on all sides on top of your spine. Now, my measuring tool, this little doodad, is what I'm going to use to place my covers on. If you have not got something like this, you can easily make your own. So this is 1/2 centimeter wide. I'm not sure what that is in inches, but I've gone and cut myself a piece that is 1/2 centimeter. So all you would need to do is just cut yourself out of your chipboard the same size piece, and you can do the exact same thing. So let's stick this down. And again, I'm just using the liquid glue. We're going to apply a decent layer onto the back, but we don't want it squidging out the sides because it will stick to our measuring tool. So we just want to apply enough that will stick to our book paper. So I'm going to go ahead and stick that roughly in the middle. And you really want to do your best to get it in the middle. You can measure if you'd rather. I, again, can't be asked to measure. I just want it to go on. So I'm eyeballing it and aiming for the center. The most important bit is these two sides equal, because when you look at your book, you'll be able to see if they're level or not. So it needs to, you really need to get that center, but I haven't measured on any of mine and they've all worked out just fine, and I've had it managed to get it centered just fine. So once that's stuck down, you can then take your either your homemade tool or the store-bought one, and all you're going to do is use that as a spacer. So it's just going to give you enough space to then put your cover on. So I'm going to use my blue one, but by all means you could use one of these. You want to add the glue between the top and the bottom of your spine piece. So the adhesive is only in the middle. We will adhere that, but we want to just do the middle. And this is where you need to pay attention if you have a upside and a downside of your papers. So for example, this would be the wrong way up. I want them this way up. So I need to pay attention to that. And I'm going to stick that one on there, which will be my back cover. And then this one will be my front cover. So they're going to go like that. So with your spacer on, you can then go ahead and add some glue. Now I like using this one purely because it gives me that top edge as well. So you have to eyeball it a bit more if you do your own. But this one I can just see that is going to line up, and I can just tuck it straight in there. Like so. So let's add some glue. And I want to make sure I'm careful not to get it on my spacer and careful not to get it under the spacer. And actually I should get my scrap bit of paper back again and just tuck that under there. Okay, and then we're going to pull that out. And then we can go ahead and stick our cover down. Just give that a firm press. Lift our spacer back out. Get over. And then we can do the other side as well. So now that we have the cover stuck down, we can go ahead and wrap this edging around. So I'm going to apply some glue onto both end bits. Oh, I forgot my scrap bit of paper again. That one there. Then we can take it and fold it. And over, and as you can see here, it's just ever so slightly too short, and that's purely because we put the paper on and it's gone a bit too short, but it doesn't seem to affect the book at all when it's all finished, so it's not a problem if that's a little bit too short on one of the ends. There we go, there's our start of our book. Now we can come and bring back in our pages, and these little flaps are going to help us to hold it together. So you want to stick it in and line it up, make sure it's all even on each side. So make sure you've got a nice gap on the top and the bottom if you've allowed for a gap. And when you've got it in the right place where you like it, what we're going to do is add adhesive again. So I'm going to grab my scrap bit of paper. I'm just going to fold this over so I've got lots of glue on it, and I pop that underneath my little flap, and then I'm going to add adhesive onto it. I'm adding quite a thick layer because the fabric absorbs some of it, so I'm just going to go ahead and make sure I've added a thick layer. And we are not touching the spine. Do not touch the spine at this point. This bit is not going to touch it. It is purely going to touch the covers, so make sure you don't get any glue on the spine, but you want it all the way to the edge, this edge over here. Okay? And when you've got that done, you can take out your scrap bit of paper. Make sure those frizzy bits aren't there. And then we are going to make sure that our book does not move, and we're going to push the spine up so that the spine connects on the back. Okay, and then we're going to close the cover down and squish. And what I like to do is then grab my clips again and just allow it to have time to set. I'm just going to clip it on for about 2-3 minutes just so that adhesive sets on the back of there, and I'll give that 2 to 3 minutes to set. Right, so take those off and then just make sure it's not stuck. Kind of clears that away. Right, now we're going to do the other side. So same again, we'll put in our scrap bit of paper just to hold that cloth from getting stuck to the book. Okay, and then we're going to do the same thing. We're going to bring that up. Nice and pulled tight. So we're going to bring that up, squidge the back right up against it, and then fold that cover over. While that's setting and sticking, you can go ahead and find yourself some paper that kind of matches the paper you have. So I went ahead and cut myself 2 pieces of green paper, And again, this is all measurements that you need to kind of think through and do according to whatever size paper you're using. But my measurement was to make sure that my paper is just ever so slightly smaller than the width of my paper for the book. So we're not measuring the cover, we're measuring the paper on the inside. And I want it just ever so slightly smaller. It just allows me some wiggle room and some room for oopsies. You could go for the exact outside measurement, but I've found that I've accidentally done it askew a bit before and then it's looked really obvious. So I found when I cut it a bit shorter, it seemed to look a bit better, but again, you could do it to the full measurement if you wanted. And then for my measurement for the length of it, I took my book and I made sure that my cover was pushed right up against it and fully open, and I measured the top to the bottom and then took off a little bit so that when I put it on, I can leave myself a little gap along that edge. And then once this is folded, I should line up with the edge of my paper or be a little bit short. But when it's too long, it's really difficult to trim off and I find it looks much worse. So I'm gonna go ahead and line it up where I want it to be on the cover to give myself a nice little edge around here. And what I'm going to do is then take my bone folder and I'm going to kind of run it down to the point where it curves, and I'm just going to indent it. And then that way I know where I need to put glue up to, if that makes sense. So it doesn't look perfect, but I do this for the back and the front cover and I just find it works the easiest. So again, I'll take myself a little bit of scrap paper and I'm going to apply glue from where I indented all the way over. I don't know if there's a better way to do this. I don't know if there's a smarter way to do this, but this is how I do it. So I'm going to take my paper, I'm going to line it up. I should line it up at the top so that I can still move it if I need to. I'm going to line it up so it looks nice and even along the top edge. And then I'm going to make sure it's central on my paper down here. So I'm going to make sure that this border is the same and nice and even. And then I can go ahead and start pressing it down. Give that a firm press because my glue is drying and I don't have loads of time. So I'm going to give that a press down there. And we're not putting any adhesive on this side. We're only putting adhesive on this first side, on the cover side. I want to make sure that that book is nice and firmly in. Now I should have actually done that a bit wider because that is a bit short, but it is better to be short than too long. I found it looks way wonkier when it's too long. What you want ideally is for this to all be covered up. So this is still exposed and there's no adhesive there. So I'm going to go ahead and take my paintbrush again and I'm going to add some glue and I'm just going to cover this bit here with adhesive and try and get that paper nice and stuck to it. I don't want it to stick to this edge here, so you can always take your scrap paper and put it right up against there. But we want our paper to cover our binding. We'll remove our scrap bit of paper and we're just going to kind of curve this around and get that to stick down on there. So I really I sold myself quite short here, but never mind. I'm learning something new every single time when I do one of these books. I'm just trying to make sure that that fabric is nice and covered up because that's the bit that we're trying to hide. We're trying to hide that ugly under there. So I've sold myself a bit short on my paper, but never mind. And then we're going to go ahead and do the same on the back side as well. Okay, that is it. That is the book done. And yes, I sold myself a little bit short there, but it's kind of the inside cover page. It's not the end of the world. What matters most is how lovely this all opens up. It opens up beautifully and flat as well. You can have it nice and flat on your desk so you can do some watercoloring, some drawing. It just makes such a perfect, beautiful, brilliant gift to give to someone. So I've got this one here with my black seam binding end. Got that one there with the natural colored one. Then I've got my bigger one. And I won't bother with the first one again because I didn't really like it. But I'm so thrilled with these. They look so professional and lovely, but if you open them you can see I definitely handmade them. So I think they work as a beautiful gift, and I can give this to someone saying it's a watercolor card. And then the next best thing is that because I work with these papers all the time, I've already got like a matching card for it if I decide to use it as a birthday gift rather than a Christmas one. I've already got a whole bunch of cards that I've made using these papers that I can put with it, so it makes a beautiful treat. The other thing I wanted to do was make a bookmark and show you how you can make a bookmark as well, but I've kind of run out of time. But I might have a go at exploring more options on doing more different kinds of stitching and bookbinding. If you want to see that, let me know. Otherwise I don't know if I'll do it or not. I have a feeling I won't get very many views from this video because bookbinding is not for everyone, but I thought this was a gorgeous, unique, one-of-a-kind gift that you could give someone and use up those papers that you've got. So thank you so much for joining me tonight, and I hope you have a lovely rest of your weekend, and I will see you next week. Bye!